Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hi, and welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lawton. On this week's episode, we are going to be joined by David Fairnie. He is the principal consultant of supply chain security for BSI, and BSI is the British Standards Institution, which is national standards body of the United Kingdom, and they work with all kinds of technical standards. And David's going to come on today to talk to us about security, of course, because he's an expert in supply chain security. Specifically, he's going to talk to us about package theft and cargo theft as well, just as we're coming out of the holiday season. And that's something that happens. You get things stolen from your porch, but there's a bigger issue as well in overall cargo theft. So he's going to enlighten us a little bit about that and then talk to us about how we can kind of combat that from the supply chain side. So, David, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Kevin, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course. Happy to have you on. You are in England, correct?
Oh, no, I'm based in Scotland. I'm in Edinburgh, in Scotland.
Okay. UK. That's why I was...
Yes, exactly.
I was kind of close, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us what it is you do as a principal consultant on supply chain security and kind of how you got to be in that role.
Yeah, sure. No problem, Kevin. I suppose I've been managing risk or conducting risk management for quite some time now. So I have a military background. I was a warfare officer in the Royal Navy for 23 years. And when I left back in 2003, I moved into the professional services industry at consultancy, looking at shipping security, actually. That's how I began. And then I migrated into port security, and I had a couple of roles, global roles for risk management and security with DP World, Dubai Ports. Okay. So I had the responsibility for looking after some 65 port facilities around the world. So pretty much cut my teeth in that role for several years. Yeah. And then moved to another organization, again, focusing on logistics and supply chain security and critical infrastructure. Before moving to take up my current role with BSI 4 years ago, where I look after the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region for BSI, okay. Professional services, and the supply chain security group.
Interesting. So now, what is BSI? So it's the British Standards Institute, but what does that exactly mean? What is it that BSI does?
Yeah, so BSI is as you covered in your introduction, is the national standards body for the United Kingdom, okay. Which means that to put that into sort of commonly known terms, we develop standards for industry and sectors, driven very much by communities from those sectors coming together, and there's a need. We support and help development of standards. So if I three or four give you some examples of the most widely adopted standards for example, quality management, environmental management, occupational health and safety. Okay. So BSI was very much at the forefront of developing those standards, and they originated from BSI. So we operate globally. We have some 85,000 clients across 193 countries. We service multiple sectors, and we help clients become more resilient, really. That's what our focus is in terms of developing standards for companies to be able to better manage the issues and the risks that they're looking to manage. And from a supply chain point of view, we look, and on the professional services side of the business, which is where my experience comes into play, we support clients across multiple sectors to help them improve their supply chain resiliency.
Interesting. So you guys, it sounds like you guys cover a lot of things, and it sounds like you're doing something that's really good for different industries and able to, like you said, create resiliency for them. So now, how do the standards end up getting set? Like, what goes into, I guess, creating a standard for something?
Well, most of the starting points are where there's within a specific sector, there's an identification by the industry or sector themselves that there are risks or emerging risks, or there's potential ways of doing things better. Okay. And BSI, from a UK standards body point of view, brings together expertise within that industry through a community process to initially develop the beginning of the standard, and it goes through a process through that community process until it's adopted by and issued by BSI.
Okay, interesting. So now let's talk about, I guess what your expertise is, security. As you mentioned before, you've been kind of all over the world for a security standpoint in the supply chain industry. So talk to us about, I guess, security in the supply chain in regards to cargo theft and also these packages now being stolen, with the rise of e-commerce and all that thing. There's so many more packages being delivered and so many more packages that end up out in the open, but there's larger scale theft that happens too as well. So why don't you break that down a little bit for us and tell us about some of the stuff that's going on out there?
No problem, Kevin. As I mentioned, I work for the professional services, the consultancy side of the BSI business, and specifically around supply chain services and solutions. And our team provide a number of different services to, again, look at helping customers improve resiliency. That includes things like as my role, which is advisory. We also provide training, and we also provide on-site verification and auditing. But that's supported by knowledge-based technology, intelligence, data, and analysis through some of the tools that we also utilize. One is called Screen, which is our supply chain intelligence software tool, and we have a team of analysts who collect information related to disruptions in the supply chain globally, and they, as I say, collect and analyze that, and then turn that around and produce reports and trends both for customers and obviously for the industry as well. So in that regard, we're pretty clued up and plugged into global cargo theft and the trends, which is why there's a specific focus at this moment in time on what we would classify as the final mile delivery risk, which is becoming much more prominent with the growth of e-commerce. So in terms of global cargo theft trends, it's huge. We're talking in billions of dollars globally, and just some examples of what we're identifying through those trends from a global perspective is the different types of commodities that are stolen. So you're talking about food and beverage, 25%, electronics, 16 to 20%, alcohol and tobacco, 12%, consumer products, 10%. So everything is valuable to criminal entities. in terms of the modalities that these thefts are occurring, staggeringly 87 to 90% of all thefts occur from trucks, as opposed to 10% from facilities or distribution centres, warehouses, etc., and less than 1% from other modalities. And those types of incidences, cargo theft types, predominantly it's theft from vehicle, and predominantly it's slash and grab modus operandi, where yes, it's organised. They're targeting specific vehicles, generally that are that park up in unsecure locations, and they're in the curtain side of the vehicle, and obviously extract whatever product is inside that vehicle, and they're off. But it's very, it's incredibly well organised. And big issues in terms of geographic, where the big issues are obviously Europe, big problems in Europe from cargo theft, North America, South America, and Asia. And if we look at some of the values involved, we calculate that the median sort of value of a cargo theft in North America is in the region of $130,000 per theft. So it's substantial. But what we've noticed as we monitor trends, not just ourselves but also another entity within the industry, the Transport Asset Protection Association. We're working in partnership with them to look at this final mile delivery, because we've identified some significant increases in thefts during that final mile of transportation. And through our analysis and experience of being on the ground, working on almost a daily basis within clients' networks, the logistics networks, we're seeing this huge move towards e-commerce and the reconfiguration of supply chains. And with that brings challenges and additional risks. What we've identified is the significant increase in the amount of theft, particularly at the parcel level, as the logistics, the e-commerce model changes. Yeah. So traditionally, the logistics would ship to the store directly, right, and sell in the store. Now it's being broken down to the parcel level, and there are many more stakeholders or actors involved in the delivery to the end customer, and that in itself brings and opens up significant risks.
Right, because it's changing hands so many more times, right, to get broken down from the bigger shipment to the smaller shipment, Yeah, just this week I was talking to some law enforcement contacts here in the UK, and they were telling me about an incident leading up to the holiday period where some 700 parcels had been taken from a courier. But what was interesting, after they concluded the investigation, and they had basically rounded up the group, and it was a group, and it was very organised. But it fell down to subcontracting, down to a level where there was no oversight and governance, and the drivers involved at the delivery level were temporary drivers, so hired for the peak periods leading up to the holidays. And there was some collusion going on inside one of the distribution centres. So they were overloading vehicles, and if it hadn't been for a member of the public who noticed a significant amount of packaging being dumped, it would never have come to light until well after the holidays. So, it is happening, and we know it's happening. Yeah, definitely. I mean, even like in the town that I live in, go on Facebook on the little town group page or whatever it is, and there's people on there saying all the time, like, we're getting packages stolen in this neighborhood, and we're getting packages stolen in this neighborhood. So it's definitely a widespread thing.
So and I don't think the industry as a whole, the logistics industry I'm talking about, is is quite cognitive of the increase in the risk and the increase in the amount of incidents that are occurring.
Yeah.
And obviously, with the increase in e-commerce, they're going to have to get their heads around it, and solutions are going to have to be found because it's only going to get worse.
Definitely, yeah. And I think even if it's not necessarily the company that loses the package for the customer, but the packages get lost somewhere along the way because they get stolen, it still has an effect on the customer and their reaction towards the company, because sometimes I guess they don't even really know.
There's the reputational issue there for the organisation that's selling directly to the customer. So it's that customer experience. And I've had some personal experience of that over the holiday period with my wife, who ordered something expecting it to be delivered before Christmas, and it didn't arrive, and it still hasn't arrived. Yeah. And I suspect it's possibly gone missing because they can't figure it out. So it's only going to get worse. And as I say, Kevin, I'm in these locations, in warehouses, distribution centres, through client engagements on a weekly basis now, and I can see the remodeling of DCs and warehousing to configure for the e-commerce market. It's happening as we speak, and the risks are only going to increase.
Definitely. So now you mentioned that the logistics industry is not really necessarily attacking this very aggressively. So how and you mentioned we got to start getting our heads wrapped around this. So how does the logistics industry and these companies start to combat cargo theft? What types of things can they start to implement, or how can they go about trying to figure out where the issue is happening and then try to correct that issue from continuing to happen?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, sure. I think there's maybe a few key things that they need to focus on, in our opinion and our experience. So again, it's the subcontracting model, the governance around the subcontracting model. So I gave you an example of something that's happened this week in the UK, and the value of those 700 odd parcels was in excess of $150,000 in 2.5 weeks. And a gang of 5 people, were able to execute that, successfully. And as I say, it was only a vigilant member of the public that sort of brought it to the attention. And so the logistics provider would not have known about that until the end client, of those 700 end clients, had contacted the supplier and complained. And so that would have, taken some time to sort of reconfigure and become known to both the supplier and the logistics provider. Mm-hmm. So again, I think one of so the governance is key. So who are you subcontracting to? Has due diligence been done on those subcontractors, and also the staff that they hire? We're advocating that appropriate due diligence is done, in particular on temporary drivers, agency drivers, making sure that your agency organisations are doing the appropriate due diligence on the individual drivers, to make sure that a chain of custody is can be trusted. Mm-hmm. So there's the governance element of it, absolutely. There's the verification. So particularly the high value high-value shipments and parcels. Ordinarily, you will be asked to sign and verify receipts of those high-value parcels in some form of technical engagement, so handheld verification, e-signature, etc. Right. However, I have experienced it myself, and I'm pretty sure you've probably experienced it, where relatively high-value parcels arrive and you're not asked to sign. It's left at your doorstep.
Yeah. I was just going to say, again, I can't remember the last time I had to sign for a package, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I'm also noticing, Kevin, I don't know if you're seeing it, but, as it's subcontracted down to all these different actors, I've actually seen, guys who are trying to earn extra buck are using their own private vehicles, and the back of the vehicle, is topped up with parcels.
I definitely see a guy like pull up in the driveway. I'm like, who is this? And they pop the trunk and they pull my baggage out.
Yes. And it was my son. So obviously he gets bored with me, labouring the point about cargo crime, cargo theft, etc. He sent me a video that he thought would be of interest to me, of an incident here. Again, another incident here in the UK where one of these, man with the white van, he was hijacked, and vehicle pulled up alongside him, threatened by a knife, and they unloaded the back of the vehicle into their own vehicle in the street in daylight.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important that the governance around how it's being subcontracted is addressed. Obviously, mapping and understanding the delivery service and the routes that you're delivering to. Verification. Ensure that there's adequate verification, particularly on the higher value products that are being delivered. And I think this is a really important one that I'm identifying, again, as I sort of engaging with different types of clients and the growth towards e-commerce. Yeah. So in some facilities, I'm seeing co-located customer service within the distribution center. Okay. So that if a customer complains that the package hasn't arrived, they generally complain to the customer services, and they can physically, walk into the operations department and check where that parcel is.
Yeah,
but many of the service providers, they're not co-located, so the supply. You effectively have the customer services, perhaps even in another country, who don't have the ability to be able to sort of cross-refer loss with the operation and the logistics operations. Yeah. And again, you made the point, and it's a very key point, where customer services people are driven very much on the client experience. They'll, maybe they'll have procedures in place, maybe they'll not have procedures in place, but generally look to retain that customer by, making a quick call and shipping another product, a replacement product, without sort of reconciling and reconfiguring and seeing if the product is still, in their custody. So I think it's really important that logistics organisations that are engaged in e-commerce have that direct communication from the customer services departments of their clients, so that they can nail those issues quite quickly, but not impact the customer experience. And again, I think the final point is if the logistics organisations are aligned with the provider, the product provider, and it's been identified that there's an increase in parcel thefts in specific locations, then they would have the ability to be able to perhaps advise customers in that postcode, that zip code, to make alternative arrangements for delivery. Okay. So they can communicate directly, perhaps go and collect from a store, as opposed to risking delivery directly to that zip code.
Yeah, I think that's
that's an interesting one, that one, because on that particular suggested way of potentially mitigating high-risk areas, I read an article literally a few days ago around the growth of e-commerce in North America and the Amazon Walmart They're both competing in this market, and I was astounded to read that I think there's a Walmart store. Every American is within 10 miles of a Walmart store.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much true, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to, I think Amazon has something like 100 DCs across North America. So obviously less accessible. But again, that's what we would advocate in terms of if there's a location that's identified by the logistics provider, or there's a trend identified by the customer services, operating together, working together, and making a call, an alternative way of delivering that parcel.
Definitely. I think the point that you made about customer service being at the operations location as well, I think that's a big one too, because a lot of times what I've seen in my experience working in operations side, the customer service team, especially if they're not located in the same area, they don't necessarily understand all the moving pieces that go into shipping that product, and giving them that
absolutely.
perspective, they can kind of understand too as well where maybe something would have gone wrong with the shipment. Whereas like a lot of times, they say like, oh, the warehouse just messed up, but maybe it's not the case, with the amount of theft that you're talking about. I mean, it's possible it could have got lost somewhere there too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly during peak periods, Kevin. Yeah, of course it is. It's a very, very busy environment during these peak periods. But yeah, I've seen it for myself. That's the model that I can see, that works. The outsourced model where the customer services are, in another geography, and they don't have that direct link either physically or by some of the systems, the operational systems, I can see opens them up to tremendous risk.
Definitely. So now how can people find out more about BSI and learn more about what BSI is about?
Well, we're certainly online. We're website. You can search us on the website. Contact me. I don't know if it's possible to provide my email address.
Sure, go for it.
It's david.fairnie@bsigroup.com. But a web search will find us, and a very good explanation of all the services that we can provide.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that it sounds like you guys cover a lot of stuff, so I'm happy that you could come on and talk about the security aspect, because I think it is, like you said, I think it is something that logistics world needs to start to take a more aggressive look at, and how do we combat it? Because even I'm thinking now, like, what's if somebody is just relying on a driver, right, to confirm the tracking and confirm that it gets delivered? What's to say that they deliver it? They just say it's delivered, and then it's not really delivered. They just take it, right? So there's a lot of gaps there that I think need to start to be addressed, and especially as volume continues to pick up and more packages get to ship. So I'm really happy you could come on and talk to us about that security aspect. So we'll post all those links on thenewwarehouse.com. And David, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.